A German shepherd burst onto the coastal trail, nose to the wind, slicing through the cold salt air like a bullet of instinct. He wasn't running from something, he was running toward someone. Moments earlier, a Navy SEAL in a wheelchair had been pushed toward the cliff's edge by the one person sworn to love him. The chair slipped, gravity answered, the ocean swallowed the sound. But dogs don't forget the smell of their person, of metal, blood, and fear. Rex remembered every mission, every command, every heartbeat Ethan had ever trusted him with. So, he ran. Through sea fog, through panic, through a kind of darkness that tries to hide the truth. What comes next will crack your chest open and fill it with something fierce. Hope. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Fog clung to the cliffs like wet silk, muffling the world into a gray hush. Ethan Walker pushed his wheelchair along the narrow path at Torrey Pines, the Pacific breathing cold air against his face. At 35, Ethan looked as if someone had carved him from determination and exhaustion. Broad shoulders still built like a Navy SEAL, dark blonde hair kept military short, jawline shadowed by a rugged beard that grew unevenly due to shrapnel scars along his left cheek. His eyes were a stormy blue, the kind that had once calmed terrified rookies during night rides overseas. His arms, roped with muscle from years of scaling ship hulls and C-130 cargo ramps, now strained against cold metal rims. In the teams, people used to say Ethan could break through steel doors just by looking at them. Now he struggled to cross 4 feet of uneven dirt. 2 years earlier, a blast in Yemen had stolen his legs and nearly took his voice with it. The blast left more than scars. It carved hollowness. Every night he woke tangled in memories of sand and screaming, the metallic sting of blood mixing with gunpowder. He survived hell but returned to a life where his wife avoided eye contact across the dinner table. Beside him trotted Rex, a 3-year-old German shepherd with glossy black and tan fur and a frame built like a 4-legged athlete. Rex had intense amber eyes that tracked everything with military precision. Even the twitch of a distant seabird's wing couldn't slip past him. Rex was trained originally for military detection, but when Ethan's legs disappeared, the dog's loyalty expanded into a mission: protect what was left of Ethan's world. The dog's steps were silent, his movements controlled, his ears swiveling like radar dishes. His presence gave Ethan something the hospitals couldn't: purpose. Ahead walked Ashley Walker, Ethan's wife. She was 29, tall, slim, and effortlessly polished. The kind of woman who moved like she believed the world owed her applause. Her long blonde hair was tied in a soft ponytail that swung like a ribbon, and her pale pink yoga set clung to a body that had once made Ethan forget the war. She had flawless skin, manicured nails, and lips always glossed with the faint scent of vanilla. Her beauty was soft, polished, magazine-worthy, yet her eyes sometimes carried the hard gleam of someone memorizing numbers rather than emotions. Before the accident, Ashley was sweet, affectionate, always touching his arm during dinner, already planning children and a house near the ocean. Since the blast, something invisible froze. She became distant, calculating. There were quiet phone calls in the bathroom, insurance papers left half hidden under bills, and a spreadsheet Ethan once found titled Projected Future Financials. At first, he told himself grief made people rigid, but the coldness lasted too long. He could feel her resentment like windburn. She married a warrior and got a broken man. Fresh air will do us good, Ashley said brightly, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She placed her hand on the wheelchair handle, soft, dainty fingers with a diamond band that caught the gray light. Ethan nodded, though inside him something trembled. He hated that tremble. He hated the way fear had replaced instinct. He was a SEAL. Fear used to sharpen his senses, not choke them. Rex whined low, and Ethan looked down. The dog's hackles stood up, fur bristling along his spine. "Easy, boy," Ethan murmured, rubbing Rex's head. Ashley glanced back, annoyance flickering across her perfect face. "He's been jumpy all morning," she said with a dismissive shrug. "Maybe he needs to burn energy." Ethan knew better. In the field, Rex never misread danger. The cliffs narrowed. The ocean crashed below, violent and endless, a frothing battlefield of dark indigo waves slamming rock. The air smelled of wet kelp and salt, but underneath was something sour. Dread. Ashley stopped the wheelchair at the very edge. The drop was dizzying. No railing, just jagged sandstone and 500 feet of nothing. She leaned over Ethan, framing his shoulders. To anyone from afar, it might look like an embrace. But Ethan could feel her stiffness. He felt her breath on his ear and smelled perfume, sweet citrus over something metallic. "You trust me, don't you?" she murmured. Ethan swallowed hard. "Of course." He wished the words felt true. Ashley's voice softened, almost loving. "Do you ever wish things were like before?" Ethan hesitated. In his chest lay a knot, shame, fear, longing. Every day. A shadow crossed Ashley's face, a tiny crack in her perfect commodure. Before the hospitals, before the chair, before all of this. She gestured vaguely at his legs, or what remained of them. Something in Ethan wilted. He was used to men shouting, "Stay with me," while bleeding out. He wasn't used to his wife whispering him away. Rex suddenly planted his front paws, body rigid, tail stiff, a silent alarm siren. Ethan opened his mouth to ask what was wrong, but Ashley leaned forward and touched the brake handle. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I can't do this anymore." Her fingers slid off the brake. The chair lurched. Rims scraped wet moss. Ethan felt gravity rip him toward the abyss. "Ashley!" His scream shredded the air. Rex launched forward, claws tearing dirt, barking, a deep, panicked roar that echoed like a flare across the cliffs. Ethan's stomach spiraled into free fall. The world became white fog, then violent motion, then cold air swallowing him whole. Ashley stepped back. Her face was pale, blank, like she had expected relief, not shock. Rex's howl tore through the cliffs, raw and primal, the sound of loyalty breaking into grief. The wheelchair hit a rock ledge, metal shrieking as Ethan's body slammed into the frame. He tasted blood and salt. Pain erased thought, but one image burned in his mind. Rex at the top of the cliff, howling the sound of a heart refusing to let go. The world beneath Ethan was an unsteady blur of wind and rock. The wheelchair wedged into a jagged sandstone outcrop halfway down the cliff face. Metal twisted and vibrating with every push of the ocean wind. Ethan's pulse hammered in his skull. A warm river of blood trickled from the gash above his brow and crawled over his jawline. His ribs throbbed with each breath, the pain sharp and deep where the metal armrest had smashed into him. His hands, scraped raw, clung to the cold frame like a man clinging to the last thread tying him to life. The sea below churned as if waiting to swallow him. His thoughts, fragmented, trembling, kept returning to the same disbelief. Ashley let go, not slipped, not panicked, let go. Above him, the sky was a pale bruise of dissolving fog. Rex's silhouette appeared only as a frantic shadow pacing along the rim. Then the dog vanished. For a split second, panic clawed Ethan's throat, until he realized Rex was running, faster than an instinct, faster than desperation, chasing the scent of someone who could help. The pain dragged Ethan toward unconsciousness, but every time darkness reached for him, rage shoved him back. He would not give Ashley the victory of his silence. Up top, Rex sprinted across the sandy path, muscles rippling beneath his black and tan coat. He wasn't graceful. He was fury with 4 legs. He leapt fallen driftwood, slid on damp sandstone, claws tearing grooves into earth. His lungs burned, but instinct burned hotter. Someone had to help Ethan. He bolted from the cliff and towards the sleepy streets of Coronado, the air still thick with marine layer. The town, normally slow in the early hours, stirred as locals prepped surfboards and tourists hunted coffee. Rex didn't care. He crossed an empty crosswalk, slipped between parked cars, ignoring honks and curses. A man shouted, "Hey, where's your owner?" But Rex didn't stop. His target was the faded sign across the street. Carter Auto and Marine Repair. A garage that always smelled of motor oil and salt air. Rex burst through the half-open bay door, claws skidding across concrete. Inside stood Ben Carter, mid-40s, tall, built solid-wide like someone who could stop a door by leaning against it. Years of service in the Marine Corps clung to him like an unfinished sentence. His skin was sun-worn bronze, hair dark brown streaked by threads of premature gray at the temples. A trimmed beard framed a square jaw, hiding a pale scar running from his left ear down to the collarbone, an old shrapnel wound from Afghanistan. He wore a grease-stained t-shirt, faded cargo pants, and work boots. His hands were thick, calloused, and stained with oil from years of labor. Despite the rough exterior, his eyes, sharp hazel, held a quiet steadiness, the kind earned only after watching men die and learning how to walk away still breathing. His personality was clipped, efficient. Ben didn't waste words. He had been the one who patched people back. Together during firefights, the one who never broke under screaming chaos. But civilian life left him drifting, empty of missions. Until a frantic dog crashed into his garage. Rex lunged for Ben's sleeve, jaws closing around fabric without harming flesh, tugging, pulling, barking, a deep and desperate sound. Ben steadied himself, surprised but not shaken. "Whoa, boy, what's wrong?" His voice was rough but warm, tinged with the gravel of sleepless nights. Rex pulled harder, leaving streaks of seawater, sand, and blood on the concrete. Ben's eyes narrowed. Blood. Something in him snapped into combat readiness. He grabbed Rex's collar and looked closer. The fur around Rex's paws was soaked, tangled with seaweed. His snout had faint flecks of rust red, not his own. Ben dropped the wrench in his hand. Someone's hurt. He moved with the speed of muscle memory, purpose restored in an instant. Ben grabbed a canvas backpack from a shelf, unzipped it, and tossed in a rescue harness, climbing rope, carabiners, emergency trauma kit, and 2 IV bags. The pack was old, military issue, with faded Sharpies scrawled on the side. Carter, Corpsman. He slung it over his shoulder, locked the bay door, and pointed to the open truck bed of his battered F-150. In. Rex jumped without hesitation. Ben fired the engine, gravel spitting beneath the tires as they shot toward Torrey Pines. Rex paced the truck bed restlessly, whining low, ears pinned against the wind. Ben drove fast, weaving between slow-moving morning traffic. He didn't need a full story. A bleeding dog was proof enough. Back on the cliff, Ethan drifted between consciousness and darkness. His breath rasped, sweat mixed with the salt of the sea and the taste of betrayal. His mind flickered with memories. Desert heat, the metallic stench of blood inside a Black Hawk, the shout of Walker, "Move." He had commanded teams through gunfire and explosions. He had never imagined his greatest battle would be against gravity and his own wife's intentions. He tried to shift, but a lightning bolt of pain ripped through his torso. His ribs felt like shattered glass. Blood dripped onto the stone beneath him, each drop a ticking clock. He closed his eyes, whispering through cracked lips, "Rex, come back." Rex came back. Ben parked at the trail entrance, grabbed his pack, and ran after Rex, who sprinted ahead like a guided missile. The fog had lifted, revealing the brutal cliff drop. "Jesus," Ben muttered. He dropped to his stomach, gripping the edge. Far below, Ethan clung to the wrecked wheelchair, body limp, head bleeding. Ben's voice carries, calm and commanding, the voice of someone who once shouted orders over gunfire. "Hey, Ethan, stay awake! I've got you!" Ethan blinked weakly and tasted blood. "Rex, found you," he breathed. Ben secured the rope to a thick root embedded in stone. "Smart dog," Ben murmured, voice tight. Rex lay beside the edge, tail rigid, eyes locked on Ethan. His body trembled not from fear, but from impatience. Help him, help him, help him. Ben strapped the harness to his own waist, clipped carabiners, tested the knot twice. He didn't look down. That was rule 1. Trust the gear, trust your training, trust the mission. "Rex," he said, voice steady, "you stay." Rex whined, muscles coiled like springs, but obeyed. Ben descended. The rope burned through gloves. The cliff face scraped his forearms. The ocean roared below like a beast. He reached Ethan, hooked the secondary harness, and whispered, "You're not dying on my watch." Ethan gave a barely there smile. Thought, "I already did." Ben locked eyes with him, grounded, fierce. Not today. Together, with Rex bracing the rope up top, they began the climb. The emergency entrance doors burst inward as Ben Carter pushed the gurney with the sheer force of adrenaline, his breath ragged, clothes soaked in sea spray and sweat. Ethan lay strapped to the rescue harness, the metal from the twisted wheelchair still clinging like a grotesque reminder of the fall. Rex ran beside them, paws skidding on glossy tile, his black and tan coat damp and speckled with dried sea salt. Ethan drifted in and out of consciousness, eyelids fluttering. The hallway lights blurred into white streaks, and the cold, sterile smell replaced the scent of cliffs and betrayal. A nurse rushed over. Nurse Karen Holt, early 50s, slender but firm-shouldered, with short gray-streaked hair cut into a no-nonsense bob. Her face held the calm, practiced strength of someone who had carried too many emergencies on her shift. She wore blue scrubs, sneakers that squeaked on tile, and the kind of expression that said she had no time for nonsense. "Trauma Bay 2, let's move," Karen snapped, voice edged with authority sharpened from decades of night shifts and lives hanging from her hands. A pair of younger nurses followed, pushing IV poles, their faces tense. Ethan's head lolled, and a soft groan escaped. "Stay with me," Ben murmured, leaning over the gurney as they wheeled. Rex tried to climb onto the gurney, barking once, sharp, urgent, not aggressive, but commanding. Karen blocked him with a hip. "Sir, animals can't be—" Ben cut in, voice low, steady, the kind that belonged in firefights. "He's trained. He found Ethan. He doesn't leave him." Karen studied the dog, elongated muscles, alert amber eyes, not a trace of fear in his posture, and nodded with reluctant respect. "Fine. He stays by the door, not on the sterile floor." Rex took his station immediately, pressing his chest against the doorway threshold, as if the building itself needed guarding. Inside the trauma bay, fluorescent lights washed color from Ethan's skin. A trauma doctor appeared. Dr. Michael Reeves, 38, tall and wiry, with dark curly hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His olive skin contrasted sharply with the white coat, sleeves rolled just enough to show forearms marked by faint scars. Small burns from military field hospitals where he served 3 tours before leaving the Navy to finish medical school. His eyes were sharp, focused, deep brown with a flicker of compassion. He was known for being direct, not warm, but when he spoke, people listened. Ribs fractured, possible internal bleeding, head laceration, Ben reported, voice efficient. Reeves nodded sharply. "You did stabilization already? Neck brace, IV fluids, pressure dressing," Ben confirmed. "Good work. You military?" "Former corpsman." Reeves didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "Then you know the drill. Step back. Let us take over." Ethan tried to speak. His throat hurt. Salt stung his lips. His voice came out broken. "My wife." Reeves leaned. "Closer. What about her?" Ethan breathed out a rasp of pain, voice trembling with disbelief that still tasted metallic. "She let go." Reeves froze, not outwardly, just a flicker in the eyes that only another soldier might see. The kind of flicker that says we've heard the unbelievable before and still believe the wounded. "We'll come back to that," the doctor said quietly. "Right now, we keep you alive." Nurses moved with precision. Scissors sliced Ethan's shirt open, monitors beeped, IV fluids dripped. Rex paced outside the glass wall, muscles coiled so tight it vibrated off him. Every time Ethan groaned, the dog growled low in his throat, protective and afraid. Ben leaned against the wall outside, chest rising and falling rapidly. He wiped dried blood from his gloves and finally let the moment crash over him. The cliff, the ropes, Ethan's ghost-white face as he dangled. His heart thudded against his ribs, confusion and adrenaline intermingling. What kind of wife walks someone to a cliff and lets go? He wanted to believe it was an accident, but Ethan's voice, cracked, raw, made it impossible. 15 minutes later, Reeves stepped out of the trauma room, peeling off gloves. "He's stable. We're taking him for scans." Ben exhaled deeply. Rex rested his head against Ben's knee, trembling. Ben dropped a hand to scratch behind his ear. "You did good, soldier," he whispered. The automatic doors at the far end opened with a sharp hiss, letting in the cold morning air. A woman in a dark slate suit strode in. Detective Sarah Monroe, 42, tall and lean with an athletic build and tightly braided dark chestnut hair. Her features were angular, cheekbones sharp enough to be a warning. Her eyes, green, cool, intelligent, absorbed everything. She moved with the calm force of someone who had interrogated killers without losing eye contact. Her posture radiated discipline. Her shoes barely made a sound on the polished floor. Sarah Monroe had built her whole identity on control, shaped by the murder of her older brother when she was just 19. Since then, she protected people by dissecting lies. Her gaze flicked to Rex first, the dog whose entire body was wound around loyalty, and then to Ben, his shirt still stained with dried blood. "Which one of you brought in Ethan Walker?" Ben straightened. "Me." Sarah introduced herself with a brief flash of her badge. "I'm Detective Monroe, Coronado Police Department. I was flagged because the incident report mentioned a possible fall off the Torrey Pines cliff." Ben inhaled through his nose, jaw tightening. "It wasn't a fall." Sarah's eyebrows lifted slightly. "That's a strong statement," Ethan's voice echoed in Ben's skull. She let go. Sarah noticed the way Rex leaned into the door, never breaking his line of sight to Ethan. She took out a notepad, not flimsy paper, but a thick flip notebook bound in dark blue leather. "Tell me, what happened?" Ben detailed the rescue, The cliff, the blood on Rex, the rope descent. Sarah listened without interrupting, gaze flickering only when something mattered. Did Ethan say anything to you about how he went off the cliff? Ben hesitated. Not because he doubted Ethan, but because speaking it aloud made it real. He said his wife let go. Sarah's jaw tensed. Name? Ashley Walker. Sarah's pen paused mid-stroke. She knew the Walker name. Ashley's wealthy parents had local connections. Not just socialite status, financial stakes in hospital boards, real estate developers. Sarah had seen their donations engraved on walls. Rex chose that moment to bark, one deep, violent sound that vibrated down the hallway. Sarah's eyes snapped toward the dog, studying him again. He's alerting, she murmured. He's not reacting randomly. Ben nodded. He knows something's wrong. A nurse signaled that Ethan had returned from scans. Sarah gestured toward the room. If he's conscious, I need to speak to him. If not, I need to see his wife. Ben's voice turned hard. Find her. Sarah didn't blink. I intend to. Ethan was wheeled back into the trauma bay. He looked smaller now, swallowed by blankets and sensors. The world blurred at the edges, but when Sarah entered, Ethan's gaze sharpened just enough to catch her silhouette. Mr. Walker, Sarah said, voice calm, steady, without pity. I'm Detective Monroe. I need you to tell me what happened at the cliff. Ethan's throat worked. His voice cracked. She let go. Ashley pushed the chair. I didn't slip. Rex pressed his head against the glass as if trying to break through. Sarah leaned closer, tone shifting from investigator to something gentler. You're safe now. We'll handle the rest. And just before exhaustion won, Ethan whispered one last fragment. She wanted the money. Sarah Monroe closed her notebook. Her face didn't react, but her eyes hardened. A case had just been born. And somewhere across Coronado, a woman who thought she was free was already running out of time. Detective Sarah Monroe sat alone in the dim glow of the precinct conference room, the single lamp above her casting a hard white circle across the table. In front of her lay a printed stack of evidence, photos of the cliff, the damaged wheelchair frame, the emergency room intake report, and one damning phrase scribbled in her notebook. She let go. Sarah's fingers tapped absently against her coffee cup as she studied a blown-up photo of the wheelchair tire track. The line cut straight toward the cliff edge, without hesitation, without a curve, without even the smallest skid mark. She had seen this pattern once before in a homicide case, a husband staging a hiking accident. As always, intent revealed itself in small details. Sarah Monroe was not a woman who overlooked details. Her presence itself suggested sharpness. Tall, lean, with dark chestnut hair braided tight, and a clean, angular face untouched by unnecessary softness. Her movements were economical. No wasted motion, no wasted time. She had built her professional life from discipline born of trauma. Losing her older brother to domestic violence when she was 19 taught her that evil doesn't shout. It whispers. Her pen scratched the words premeditated trajectory. She closed the folder with a decisive snap. Across town, Ashley Walker was not calm. In the luxury penthouse she and Ethan shared, a glass-framed apartment overlooking the marina, the silence was suffocating. Ashley paced barefoot across polished floors, still wearing yesterday's pale pink yoga set. Her blonde hair clumped around her face in messy strands, mascara smudged from tears she hadn't meant to shed. Her beauty remained striking. Delicate heart-shaped face, slender ballet-like limbs, but the nerves twisting inside her made her shoulders tight and jaw clenched. She stared at her phone screen, at the message she had typed but not sent. Did anyone see us at the cliffs? She deleted it, typed again. Everything is fine. He'll be declared incompetent. We proceed. Deleted again. Her hand trembled. Get a grip, she whispered to herself. She forced a breath, smoothing her ponytail, practicing her smile in the floor-to-ceiling window. The reflection staring back didn't look like a grieving wife. It looked like a cornered animal. And then, a buzz from the kitchen counter. Another message from her secret number, listed under Richard but really belonging to Rick Dawson, a mid-40s financial planner and a smooth-talking opportunist. Rick was tall and slim, with hair dyed a shade too dark, a jaw peppered by a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes that never stayed still. He liked expensive cologne and the illusion of power. Ashley's hand shook as she opened the message. Insurance payout won't process without his signature or death certificate. We need proof. Ashley swallowed the acid rising in her throat. Proof. She thought pushing Ethan into the ocean would create proof. Instead, Ethan survived. And the dog. Damn that dog. At the hospital, the world moved differently. Recovery smelled like disinfectant and warm IV fluid. Ethan lay in the bed, color slowly returning to his face. Ben sat next to him, elbows on knees, his expression a blend of relief and a protective anger simmering beneath. Rex rested his chin on Ethan's blanket, amber eyes half closed, the tip of his tail flicking with small bursts of contentment each time Ethan breathed more steadily. A soft knock came at the door. Sarah stepped in, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a dark thread, wool. "Forensic team found this on the broken frame of your wheelchair," she said, placing the bag onto the bedside table. "It matches fibers from your wife's blazer." Ethan swallowed, emotions fighting between rage and mourning. "I need you to tell me everything you remember," Sarah said gently. Ethan closed his eyes. Flash. Ashley's hand on the brake. Flash. The sudden lurch. Flash. Rex's scream. "She said she couldn't do this anymore," Ethan whispered. Sarah exhaled slowly. That's motive. Before she could respond, the door opened again. A second doctor entered. Dr. Emma Silver, mid-30s, petite, with warm brown skin and close-cropped black curls. Her scrubs were mint green, and she carried a clipboard with effortless efficiency. Emma was known throughout the trauma wing for her brutal honesty and gold-thread kindness. "Mr. Walker, scans are clear," she said gently. "You're lucky to be alive. Someone up there likes you." Her gaze traveled to Rex, then softened. "Or someone down here?" Sarah asked. "Doctor, based on your medical assessment, could this be an accidental fall?" Emma's eyebrows rose in disbelief. "With injuries like that? Not likely. The bruising pattern shows direct force from behind. It aligns with being pushed." Sarah nodded. That was all she needed. Later that afternoon, Sarah and Ben drove to Ashley's penthouse. Sarah moved with purpose. Ben followed, jaw tight, hands balled into fists. When Ashley opened the door, her expression froze. "Detective, Ben." Her voice fluttered, sugar thin. Sarah handed her a business card. "We need to ask you a few questions about your husband's accident." Ashley tried to step back, but Ben blocked her retreat. "It wasn't an accident," he said, voice darkened by fury. Ashley flinched. Sarah saw it. The fear, not of guilt, of exposure. "Where were you between 7 and 9 a.m. yesterday?" Sarah asked. Ashley's voice cracked. "A hiking trail. He rolled off. I tried to stop him." "Funny," Sarah murmured, "because the trajectory of the wheelchair shows zero braking." Ashley's composure shattered. "Maybe the brakes failed." Sarah pulled a printed screenshot from her folder. Email records. Subject line, policy activation, expedited. Ashley's chest rose and fell rapidly, panic consuming her polished veneer. "I don't know what you think." "We think," Sarah said sharply, "that you stood behind your disabled husband and let him die so you could collect $6 million of insurance payout." Ashley's face drained, turning ghost white. The next day, the courtroom was full. Ethan rolled forward in his wheelchair, Rex trotting beside him wearing a simple vest that read, "Service Dog." Ben sat behind them, shoulders squared in silent solidarity. The judge, Judge Leonard Briggs, early 60s, stern with salt and pepper hair and deep-set eyes, presided with the calm weight of decades on the bench. He despised liars more than criminals. Criminals he could sentence. Liars wasted time. Sarah presented evidence. Ben testified to the rescue. Dr. Emma Silver confirmed the injury patterns. Deliberate force from behind. Finally, Sarah pressed play on the audio recording recovered from Ashley's phone. Ashley's voice whispering to Rick, "The money clears once he's gone. Then we're free." The courtroom went silent, thick and cold. Ashley began to sob. Not regret, but realization. Rick Dawson was arrested earlier that morning for wire fraud. Ashley turned violently toward Ethan. "I gave you everything." Ethan stared at her, heart bruised, yes, but no longer broken. "You gave up the moment the wheelchair arrived." Rex pressed his head against Ethan's knee, grounding him. The jury took 30 minutes. Guilty, attempted murder, insurance fraud. Judge Briggs cleared his throat. "One final matter. Mr. Walker's dog demonstrated exceptional service and prevented further harm. The court formally recognizes Rex Walker as a certified service animal with full public access rights. The gavel struck, sharp and final, the sound of justice hitting the table. The first true morning of autumn arrived with the salt smell of low tide and a sky painted in soft pastels, peach, lavender, and the faint gold of a sun not fully awake. Dew clung to the newly cut pine boards of the half-finished bungalow overlooking Dog Beach. Sawdust and ocean mist mingled in the air, the scent of building something new, where something inside Ethan Walker had nearly died. Ethan sat in his wheelchair beneath the skeletal porch roof, blanket across his lap. His body remained weakened, scars tight against muscle, ribs still tender, but his spirit felt steadier than it had in years. His broad shoulders carried less weight of regret, and the storminess in his blue eyes had thinned. The beard that once looked like the evidence of exhaustion now felt like the mark of a man rebuilding. Working beside the porch was Mark Jensen, a former Army carpenter in his early 40s, shoulders wide, with sandy brown hair cut close and crow's feet permanently carved from smiling through pain. Mark had lost 2 fingers during deployment in Syria, but the accident never touched his upbeat nature. He used a glove fitted with a small clamp to hold nails steady. "You need that board angled at 20 degrees, Ethan called out, pointing with his water bottle. Mark grinned. "You know, Walker, for a guy who can't stand, you boss people around like a general." Another man, Raymond Ortiz, late 50s, retired Navy electrician with a silver mustache and the posture of a man who refused to bend to age, tightened wiring along the ceiling beam. His hands were steady, movements patient. He had joined the project the moment he heard Ethan needed a home that could accommodate a wheelchair. "Measure twice, cut once," Raymond muttered. Or in Ethan's case, measure once, then order everybody else to redo it. They all laughed, even Ethan. It was the kind of laughter that patched holes grief left behind. Rex circled the porch, tail swishing through sawdust, nose twitching each time a seagull cried overhead. The 3-year-old German shepherd had developed a new ritual. He stole Ethan's socks, sprinted across the sand to bury them triumphantly, then returned wearing an expression of pure pride. Today, Rex placed a sandy sock on Ethan's lap like a trophy. Ethan sighed dramatically. "Congratulations, another casualty." Rex responded with a smug tail wag and rested his chin on Ethan's thigh, amber eyes full of quiet devotion. By mid-morning, Sarah Monroe arrived carrying paperwork inside a neat leather folio. She wore dark jeans, a crisp white blouse, and a tailored navy blazer. Practical clothing that matched her structured, composed nature. Even dressed casually, her presence still felt like authority. Her posture remained tall and centered, braid tight, green eyes scanning the progress of the house. "Looks like you're almost done," she said. Ethan nodded toward the ramp. "They built the entrance so smooth I think I could roll up it using one pinky." Sarah leaned against a porch post, arms crossed. For someone so controlled, her eyes softened as she watched Rex settle beside Ethan. "How's the writing going?" Ethan tapped the notebook on his lap. "Slow. Weird to write about the war without sounding angry. Weird to write about marriage without sounding bitter." Sarah exhaled slowly. "It takes courage to tell the truth, especially the truth people don't want to hear." Before Ethan could answer, a minivan pulled up, and a woman stepped out, unfolding a wheelchair ramp from the side of the van. Her name was Emily Hart, early 30s, slightly shorter than average, with warm beige skin and soft waves of chestnut hair falling past her shoulders. Her clothes, simple sweater and jeans, looked worn from hard use, especially around the elbows where she carried her son often. Emily had tired eyes yet a light beneath them, like someone who refused to stop believing in small miracles. She unbuckled her son, Toby Hart, 7 years old, born with cerebral palsy. Toby was small and fragile, limbs stiff, head tilted slightly to listen better, but his smile, wide, crooked, and bright as a lighthouse, made the world lean in without being asked. Rex rushed toward Toby first, tail wagging in slow, controlled sweeps, as if he knew he needed to be gentle. Toby reached out, hands tremoring. "Hi, Rex." His voice broke on the dog's name. Rex leaned forward, pressing his head gently into the boy's lap. Toby giggled, soft at first, then full of wonder. Emily's breath caught. She touched her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "He doesn't connect like that with people," she whispered. Ethan felt a pinch in his chest. He remembered the first time Rex rested his head on his useless legs, how it made numbness bearable. Mark wiped sweat from his forehead and whispered to Ben, "That dog's doing more therapy than half the hospital staff." Ben, leaning on the porch railing, arms crossed over his broad chest, shrugged with a grin. "Rex doesn't need a degree to fix souls." Emily sat beside Ethan while Toby and Rex stayed together on the sand. "I heard what happened," she said quietly. Ethan flinched, not from pain, but from the vulnerability of being seen. Emily continued, her voice tender but steady. "People break in silence, but sometimes healing makes noise, like hammers," she gestured to the men building, "and barking." Ethan followed her gaze to Rex. "He saved me," Ethan said. "He wouldn't let me fall." Emily looked at him, really looked. "Maybe you needed someone to prove you were still worth holding on to." The words hit Ethan with more force than the fall had. Hours later, the final board slipped into place. Mark hammered the last nail, raised his hands, and yelled, "Bungalow secured! Bring on the beer and bad decisions!" Raymond rolled his eyes. "The only bad decision here is letting you near a nail gun." Sarah stepped toward Ethan, placing signed documents into his hand. "Your house is officially transferred and recorded. No strings, no risk. It's yours." Ethan blinked at her, gratitude making his throat too tight for words. Sarah gave a rare, genuine smile before heading to her car. Evening came slow, stretching golden light across the ocean. Ethan wheeled to the edge of the new porch, where the ramp sloped down like a gentle invitation. Rex lay across his feet, chin on Ethan's shoe, while Toby leaned against Rex's side, fingers tangled in dog fur. The sky burned copper, waves roared, peace settled over them, delicate but real. Ethan whispered, "I thought the cliff was the end." Emily sat on the step below him, watching her son laugh as Rex nudged sand onto his sneakers. "Sometimes," she said softly, "God uses cliffs to show us who will climb down for us." Ethan looked at Rex, at the house built by calloused hands and stubborn hearts, at the tiny boy laughing into the wind. "I lost so much," he murmured, "but maybe that loss made room for something better." Rex nudged his hand, tail thumping twice, a vow renewed. And somewhere deep inside, the man who once fell finally felt himself rise. When life pushes us to the edge, sometimes the miracle isn't a sudden rescue from the sky, but the quiet loyalty that refuses to let us fall. A dog's devotion, a stranger's kindness, a community that shows up, and a God who never leaves us abandoned. In everyday life, we face cliffs of fear, betrayal, loneliness, and doubt. Yet grace arrives through people we never expected, and strength we didn't know we had. If this story touched your heart, share it so someone else can find hope. Leave a comment to tell us what part moved you most, and subscribe so you won't miss the next reminder that God still works through ordinary moments and ordinary people. May the Lord bless you and your family with protection, healing, and a miracle right when you need it most.